Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me today. We are about to embark on a beautifully structured coast-to-coast learning journey. We've taken 50 rapid-fire USA trivia facts from a comprehensive nationwide quiz and completely transformed them into a visual map of American knowledge. So if you've ever wanted to connect the dots between scattered facts, from majestic national parks to defining historical milestones, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to make these facts stick by organizing them into a really captivating story.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start with geography, nature, and extremes, move into cities, capitals, and states, then trace key moments in U.S. history before wrapping the whole thing up with iconic American landmarks. Let's get into it.
Section 1. Geography, Nature, and Extremes.
Now, before we even touch on the people or the history, we really have to understand the landscape that shapes it all. So, what are the geographic extremes of the United States? Take a second and mentally lock in your guesses for the largest and smallest states by area. Do you have them? All right, let's see how you did.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is just the sheer contrast. It's wild. On the left, we've got Alaska. It is officially the largest state in the U.S. by area, and dramatically, the state with the most volcanoes. It's just this massive, fiery, frozen expanse. Then, look over on the right. That is Rhode Island, the absolute smallest state in the U.S. by area. Literally, you could fit Rhode Island into Alaska hundreds of times over.
Let's look a little closer at the physical skeleton of the country. Towering above everything else is the tallest mountain, Denali. Then, slicing right through the heart of the land, you've got our longest river, the Missouri River. Further south, the Rio Grande forms this absolutely crucial natural border between Texas and Mexico. And of course, soaring above all of this incredibly diverse geography is the national bird of the United States, the bald eagle. These aren't just trivia answers, you know? They're the real geographic anchors of the nation.
Okay, look at that massive number, 10,000. This brings us to a state pretty much defined entirely by its waterways. Minnesota proudly carries the famous nickname, the Land of 10,000 Lakes. But it doesn't stop there when it comes to immense bodies of water. The United States is also home to the largest freshwater lake in the entire country, Lake Superior. Water is, for sure, a defining feature of the American geographic identity.
And to close out our geography section, we absolutely have to recognize the preserved natural beauty found in the nation's remarkable park system. Wyoming gives us the famous Yellowstone National Park, while Utah boasts Arches National Park, which is known all over the world for those unique sweeping rock formations. It's just an incredible testament to the varied physical beauty of the country.
Moving right along to Section 2, Cities, Capitals, and States.
So America isn't just vast, empty landscapes and towering mountains, right? It's densely populated with historic states and bustling cities, each with its own distinct flavor. And honestly, if there's one area of trivia that constantly trips people up, it's state capitals. We always kind of assume the biggest city is the capital, but that's rarely the case. Take California. It's not LA or San Francisco, it's Sacramento. Texas is governed from Austin. Nevada's capital isn't the dazzling lights of Vegas, but actually Carson City. Illinois is run from Springfield, not Chicago. And way out in the Pacific, Hawaii's capital is Honolulu. Pinning these down is absolutely crucial for understanding America's political map. Now, culture and geography really give these places incredibly distinct identities. Think about it. Chicago is famously known as the Windy City, right? Meanwhile, New Jersey is the Garden State, Florida claims the Sunshine State, and Kentucky is known worldwide as the Bluegrass State. Then we have cities defined entirely by sheer human scale and achievement. New York City holds the title for the highest population in the U.S., while down south, New Orleans has the incredible cultural distinction of being the birthplace of jazz. These nicknames are basically just a shorthand for local culture.
And speaking of distinct identities, many U.S. states are so iconic they can be recognized purely by their geographical map outlines. We're talking states like Colorado, New York, Illinois, Michigan, Alabama, North Carolina, Ohio, and Kentucky. The shapes themselves are just ingrained in the American consciousness. Associating major cities with their home states is also key, like knowing for sure that the famous city of Seattle is located in Washington, and Baltimore is anchored right there in Maryland.
All right, that brings us to Section 3, Key Moments in U.S. History.
Now that we've mapped out the physical land and the cities that populate it, let's move to the timeline and see how this all builds. How was this nation actually put together?
Well, it all starts with St. Augustine, the oldest city in the United States. Fast forward a bit to 1776, the pivotal year the United States officially declared independence. That foundational era gets cemented by the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Then, leaping way forward into the 20th century, we mark a day that changed the modern world. December 7th, 1941, the date of the historic Pearl Harbor attack. Seeing these events in sequence like this really shows a nation that is constantly evolving.
And, the breadth of American history is incredibly complex. It's made up of defining figures, institutions, and specific historic sites. George Washington was the first president of the United States, which is an achievement commemorated by his face on the $1 bill. We've got deeply rooted intellectual institutions like Harvard University, located up in Massachusetts. There are legendary battlegrounds like the Alamo, a historic site right in Texas. And the story of the nation's expansion didn't officially pause until Hawaii became the very last state to join the Union.
And finally, we arrive at Section 4, Iconic American Landmarks. So how do we actually remember all this history? Well, we build monuments. Let's start over on the East Coast, where early American history, immigration, and incredible innovation took place. We have the Statue of Liberty, famously a gift from France. In Philadelphia, you can find the legendary Liberty Bell. There's Plymouth Rock, a symbol of the earliest arrivals. And, of course, the Wright Brothers National Memorial, honoring the literal birth of aviation. Each of these monuments tells a very specific story about America's origins and earliest triumphs. Now, as we journey westward across the country, the landmarks become this awesome mix of cultural marvels and huge monumental achievements. In Ohio, we find the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Chicago boasts the incredibly reflective Cloud Gate sculpture. Further west is the soaring Gateway Arch. Then, carved directly into the earth itself is Mount Rushmore. And it is crucial to note here that Theodore Roosevelt is featured up there, right alongside Washington, Jefferson, and Lincoln. Finally, reaching the Pacific Northwest, we find the futuristic Space Needle in Seattle.
So, what does this all mean? The crucial takeaway here is that trivia isn't just a random list of answers you have to memorize. When you actually organize the information, you realize it's the story of a nation. From St. Augustine to the Space Needle, how many of these 50 American facts did you actually know? Hopefully, by structuring them together today, they've shifted from being just distant trivia to clear, memorable knowledge. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.